My name is Ray DuBose. I'm from District 2 of the city, which includes the north half of the city. And I'm here to tell you about my time as a city councilman. Well, believe it or not, I was born in the Panama Canal Zone. My father was in the Navy and stationed at the air base there, and that was where I was born, to a family of Floridians. So I was soon, in 6 months, I was back in Florida. My father was a third-generation jeweler. He was a city councilman, to think of that. He was on the school board, and he was just all-around volunteer fireman, all-around good guy. Well, I was very surprised that I was drafted because I had a wife and a young son at home, infant. And I was determined I wasn't going to give them any more time than I could, so I was drafted and served for 2 years. But I was headed to Vietnam, and we got up out of Fort Lewis, Washington in the airplane, and they said, well, boys, I got a surprise for you. You're going to South Korea. So one of the flights went to South Korea, and I was on that. Landed, stayed in a Quonset hut for a week, and then they said, DuBose, you're up. There's a sedan waiting out front for you. It's a colonel's driver, and he's going to take you to Seoul, Korea, and you're going to work for them. So I worked for the personnel section. I had 2 clerk typists. I wore a coat and tie every day. I spoke to the Pentagon about every night of the week for enlisted soldiers redeployment. So I had about several thousand redeployments over the time period. Came back to home, and we decided we were going to expand the jewelry store. So over the years, we added 6 more stores. And they went from Melbourne, Florida to Stuart, Florida to Okeechobee. We had all sorts of stores there. I found Newnan, Georgia quite by accident. We had met with a business broker in Atlanta that said we wanted to go somewhere from Atlanta to Virginia, west to Tennessee, and east to the Atlantic Ocean. And we didn't find a thing. We were disgusted. We made the trip up here, and she said, well, wait just a minute. I know you said you wanted to be north of Atlanta, but I have a neat city I want you to see, and that was Newnan. So Saturday afternoon, we drove to Newnan. As soon as we got out of the car, we said to my wife and myself, this is it. We walked into the store, and we met the Manns, and they said, where have you been? We've been looking for a buyer for several years. And they said, you know, it couldn't be anything better. And we looked around and we said, you know, this is a place we'd like to make our home and grow our business. And so we went back, and I called them on Monday and said, let's make a deal. And so within a couple of months, we'd bought a jewelry store. Didn't have any money, but we'd bought a jewelry store. As we were here the first year, Linda, my wife, met up with the people in the school system, and she gave tours of homes to the students. Each year they'd do the same grade tour of homes from Newnan to Grantville and Sharpsburg and so on, but it was very interesting. And I just liked it. Unfortunately, I didn't know that or think about the fact that World War II veterans had opened shops around Newnan, and they were all retirement age. And so we came into a town that had a lot of major stores that were closing up in the next year or two. So we had to get involved, quite naturally, which we wanted to be involved, but involved with the Merchants Association, later to be Main Street. Well, I'd been involved for a couple of years in the Downtown Development Authority. In fact, we were meeting at that time over the fire department at the old City Hall. And there were a couple of city councilmen who decided they were not going to run again. And they approached me, particularly a fellow by the name of Pope Jones, that he said, you know, you've been doing a lot for the city. We think you'll continue, and we'd like for you to run for the city council, which I did. Pope lived down the street from me, about 4 houses. And so we shared rides for our kids to school and that sort of thing, and so we'd gotten to know each other. And that's how I got started. I ran unopposed every year. Well, I thought about some of those things. One was the redevelopment of downtown. And we had a large step out in front of our store for actually when the carriages pulled up, they could step right out of the carriages and onto the sidewalk. But as cars started parking along there, it became difficult for people to step on the step. In fact, they'd often have to walk down to the corner and come back up the sidewalk to do that. So that was probably about a 2-year process. where we had wooden gangplanks, wooden sidewalks. Everybody thought they were going to go out of business, but we made it, much to my surprise. Yeah. Well, I think one of the main things is the redevelopment of the Carnegie Library. When I first was in town, and later on, it was just a bunch of rundown government offices, and they were used for several different things, but court and whatever. And when we finally made the decision to redevelop that, we hired a firm that went in and historically preserved that building, and then we hired good people to run it as a library and resource center. It's hard to believe, but I'm a fourth-generation city councilman. And I think that was set up as you were a jeweler, you were a public servant, and did different things to be involved in the public, not for business, but just because you were exposed to so many people and so many different things. Well, it's important that I be involved, number one, because I enjoy it. But number two, I get to see the public, and you see different people from different places, and they can tell if you're interested or not, so that's why I enjoy it. Speaking of funny stories, at some occasion the fire trucks were next to the Carnegie Library for a demonstration, and they had a boom truck, and they asked me, they said, "It's your turn, Ray, to go up in that boom truck and see how it works." I said, "Okay, I'll go up." I didn't like heights, but I went up. And I went up, and it's time to come down, and it wasn't going down. And they looked around and fussed around with the truck, and they couldn't do anything. We had a mechanic over at the city garage named Benny Hayes. Old Benny came over, he was a good old country boy, and he started checking the truck out, checking it out. The next thing I saw, he had a stick, and he stuck it down in the gas tank and says, "Only thing wrong with this truck is it's out of gas." So he got some gas and poured it in and lowered me back down. Well, I have grandchildren, and I hope they become community leaders. But again, I would say listen, think ahead, pay attention to what's going on around you, and then react. But listen first and react second. Well, if you stop and think about it, I want to thank the citizens of Newland, the electorate, the people that voted me in. You would think I would want to thank the city council for working with them or whatever, and I do thank them, but first and foremost, we're here to serve the citizens, and we just not do it by district, but by the whole city. Well, this is my third career that I'm going to retire from, and I think this will be it. But who knows, in January I may find something else to do. But I enjoyed every minute of it, and I enjoyed working with the city council and city staff.
You've been a great friend and mentor to many of us, myself included. There was a time, you may recall this story, after I was hired, about 13 or 14 years ago now, that we were having kind of a rough time, we'll say, with one of the Downtown Development Authority board members. And you know, I was very close to looking to move and go somewhere else.
I think you already probably had.
And I asked if I could meet you at your jewelry store at the time, and you took me in the back of the jewelry store, and we sat down, and you spent an hour or so with me, listening to me, and not just hearing me, but listening to me, and giving me ideas on ways to work. And I still remember that story today, and I very much appreciate it, because but for that meeting, I don't know that I would still be in Newnan.